who you're here to see tonight, Ben Swann. Now, Ben has actually been a journalist for 14 years. He's the winner of 2 Emmy Awards and 2 Edward Snowden Awards. Or 2 Edward Snowden. We'll make that an award soon. Alright. It's the Edward Murrow. For years, he covered the Mexican drug cartel, uncovering truths that the media would not talk about. In 2010, he moved to Cincinnati. And when he moved to Cincinnati, he started working on this project, which is called Reality Check. During this show, during the process of investigating the 2012 Republican primaries, he would start to doubt the electoral process while covering what was going on and what was unethical. Now, during this process, he was actually also very confrontational. He was known for his investigative journalism and being able to ask the questions that nobody else was asking. He was the first to confront Obama on his secret kill list. And he was also the first to confront Mitt Romney on the railroading of duly elected delegates. Ben Swann is an internet phenomenon with over 10 million video views on YouTube and spanning over 140 countries. With that, I would like to introduce our keynote here today and your hero, Ben Swann.
He's going to get me droned on the way home. Have you guys watch this and I'll share something else with you in a minute. Good things. Yeah. Who are you? Oh, yeah. Well, let me just first of all start off by saying thank you guys for being here. Thank you. It's great to have everybody here. I want to show you something, and I'm going to take a quick picture of you guys for Twitter, if that's okay. The age we're in. See that little pose there? I need everybody to stand up for a second. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. By the way, we're gonna be showing you guys something in the next few weeks here. But people keep asking, why is that guy like posed like that? It's weird. Yeah, it's kind of strange, right? Actually, if you look at it, and then there's a insignia of a bell that forms around it, he actually makes the crack in the Liberty Bell. It's what it will be eventually. You'll see it soon. It won't be too long. Let me just start out by saying, my son, in that video we showed you a minute ago, he was 5 years old. I have 5 kids, by the way. My youngest is 5 years old. He watched that video and he says to me the other day, he says, "Dad, why are you pretending to be a superhero?" I said, "I'm not pretending to be a superhero." He says, "Dad, you're trying to make people think you're a superhero." And I said, "No, how do you know I'm not a superhero?" And he says, "Because you don't have any powers." Touche. But I know I don't have powers. What if I do have powers? Like what? I said, well, like asking people tough questions and getting answers from people. He said, those aren't powers. Powers are like laser eyes and like being able to fly. I said, Batman can't do those things? Yeah, but Batman has a cool suit. So fair enough. So this is my cool suit, as cool as I can get for you guys. But he keeps me humble. I want to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about Liberty is Rising, what it is, what the Truth in Media Project is all about, and how I hope and believe that we can work together, Iowa and across the country. We can work together to really make a huge impact in this nation. Because right now what's happening across the nation is this thing called the Liberty Movement. Have you heard of it? It's rising tonight. Now, unfortunately, there aren't 10,000 people here. But we don't need 10,000 people, do we? We don't need 2,000 people. We don't need a majority of people, right? Yeah. What does Samuel Adams say we need?
I read minority.
Right there. For those of you in the back who can't see it, so sad, I'm sorry. But it says this, it says, it takes not a majority to prevail, but an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That is your job. That is my job. It's not to ever become the most populous group of people in any political system. It's to be tireless in the work of setting brush fires of freedom. I love that idea. A brush fire of freedom. What does that look like? It means that you're not necessarily going to win the argument every time. It doesn't mean people are going to agree with you on every issue, are they? But a brush fire means you're just setting this one thought. You're challenging this one piece of the status quo, this one thing that makes people say, maybe. That's all I need. We just need a maybe. That's where we start tonight. You know, the Liberty is Rising thing, and by the way, it's a hashtag, Liberty is Rising, so if you're using it, please hashtag it, because we want to be able to see it on Twitter. Keep it trending on Twitter. But the hashtag Liberty is Rising, the idea behind that. If I step away, can you still hear me? Because I'm kind of ADHD, so I got to be able to move around, I'm sorry. The idea behind that is pretty simple. It's that liberty in this country is having its moment. Liberty is rising. I was on Peter Schiff's show the other day, and he said to me, why do you say liberty is rising? Because I'm not sure it is. He said, in fact, I think liberty is dying in America. The question is he right? On some levels, perhaps. My thanks to Kim for what she had to say a few minutes ago. Wasn't she great? Yeah. I must tell you, I have found her secret. You laminate the pages before you start. I like it. That's a good one. She says it keeps it from getting wet if you're in the rain. For all time. She's a homeschool mom. She's always ready, okay? They're like the Boy Scouts. They're prepared. So he says that liberty is dying in America. And just to an extent, you know, Peter's right. Absolutely. You have the Patriot Act and the NSA and all that's happening there. Clear violations of constitutional rights. And most people don't seem to care. When we talk about the Patriot Act, it's like hitting your head against the wall with most people, isn't it? You explain to them why the Constitution protects people, and the response is what? Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why does it matter? That's the response from most people. And so the Patriot Act and the NSA and all the snooping and the spying, all that stuff is going on right now. The prosecution of whistleblowers, incredible. We're contemplating calling for a national day of boycotting boycotting the Whistleblower Protection Act. What do you guys think about that? 1989, Congress signed into law the Whistleblower Protection Act to protect people who worked for the government who were going to come out and reveal illegal activities. Do you think we have a protection act for whistleblowers? So why don't we just abolish it? Let's just call for a day and say, let's just abolish it because we don't honor it in this country. What do you think? You guys want to get behind that? You think we can do that? Man, what's going on in here? Hello? Maybe not. Liberty is rising. You have the DOJ seizing journalist records. We're going to talk more about journalists in a few minutes, but that's a huge story. And you know what's sad about that is it rang really loudly in media circles that this was happening to James Rosen, who, by the way, is a very, very good reporter. But when it was happening now to Glenn Greenwald, people aren't saying as much. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. What else? You got drone strikes on U.S. citizens. You got drone strikes all over the world, killing people all over the world, and we're calling it what? Collateral damage. It happens. Mistake. We have the IRS targeting political groups. For those of you who follow Reality Check, by the way, I was a year ahead of everybody else in that story. I'm just saying, a year. How about the price we pay for war and all these interventionist wars that we have right now? And we keep talking about this endless war with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And now we're trying to have peace talks with the Taliban. But we haven't done anything about getting rid of the NDAA. So how does that work? We'll talk about that. What about the drug war? And the fact that this is an ongoing war that makes absolutely no sense. The fact that Mexican drug cartels are the single biggest threat to America's national security. A 2,000-mile-long land border with cartels that are extremely well-funded, extremely well-armed. We're spending billions of dollars in national treasure, and more importantly, we're spending the lives of our soldiers over in Afghanistan. And yet we have a 2,000-mile-long land border, and we could end the drug war tomorrow by legalizing pot. Yeah! Woo! What did I come to? What's he talking about? Does he not know he's in Iowa? It makes sense.
Occupy Terry Branstad!
Federal Reserve Bank, can we at least agree on that? And CISPA, PIPA, SOPA, anybody else who's in the royal family. All of those things. These internet bills that are designed to protect intellectual property rights, which of course will do nothing to protect intellectual property rights, because there's a thing that's already in existence called copyright law. We already have it. We don't need that to protect the internet. So the question, is liberty rising or is it dying? Well, maybe it's both. Because right now, liberty is in peril. It is rising. We have an opportunity. But it's in peril because of the clowns in the Republican and the Democratic parties that aren't dealing with any of these issues on behalf of the people whom they are supposed to represent, and instead are getting us all tied up on issues that we're going to fight over that really make no big difference in the long run. The biggest problem, of course, that we have in this country is that the politicians, whether it be on the national level, whether it be members of Congress, whether it be the president himself, or we work our way down into the local levels, are not honoring something called the oath of office. The idea that there is rule of law in this country. Rule of law that determines your freedom and protects it. You know, it's so crazy to me that we have evolved to a point in our society today where we actually believe that rights and freedoms only belong to the guilty. That the only people who care about freedom and about due process are criminals, bad people, terrorists. They care about those things because it's their escape from justice. How the founders and the framers would have been so disgusted by that idea. Someone just got a text message. Disgusted by that idea, wouldn't they? The idea that the Bill of Rights was designed to protect the guilty? Well, it wasn't. It was designed to protect the innocent. But today we say the innocent don't need rights because we're innocent. That's how far we've come. Of course, lawmakers are also the part of the problem because of who they answer to. Influence peddlers. Did you know that there were 12,719 registered lobbyists working in 2011, influencing Congress, the White House, and federal agencies? Lobbying is a $3.3 billion business in Washington, but you already knew that. But lawmakers also answer to party bosses. We've seen that happen as well. We saw that happen to a great extent all throughout the 2012 presidential campaign, didn't we? You know, the whole Ron Paul thing, a lot of people think that I was like a Ron Paul supporter who managed to get a microphone and a legitimate job and said, this is the moment. We're going to do this. And started reporting so that I could sneak him into office. My bosses thought that. When in fact, to be completely transparent here, I knew nothing about Ron Paul the first time I reported on him. Nothing. And I'm kind of embarrassed by that because we're from the same state. Granted, it's Texas, so we were like 900 miles apart. But even so, just didn't know anything about him. In fact, the only thing I knew about him at the time was that he was the crazy guy during the 2008 election and the presidential campaign who had to stay at the end of the stage. And I thought he was from Alaska for a while. Who's that guy? Oh, he's crazy. And then, of course, you know, it all came up because somebody on Facebook sent me a message one day and said, what's wrong with Ron Paul? Why doesn't the media talk about him? And I said, they do talk about him. And they wrote back and said, no, they don't. So I was like, okay, well, I'll look into it. And I did. So what I found was that party bosses and lobbyists and special interest groups and focus groups and political consultants are the problem in Washington because lawmakers don't answer to the one group of people that they're expected or required to answer to under law. You. They don't answer to you. They answer to all these other groups. And for too long, the American people have put up with it. And part of the reason they put up with it is because even though Washington is broken, there's no accountability. None at all. It's a handsome group of people. I'm not sure who the guy is with the GQ thing. I don't think he has a show anymore. But the rest of them, it's a broken system, is it not? It's a system in Washington that does not work, and the one group that is tasked with, supposed to, given the authority to really stand up for you, the people, and hold those in power accountable, is media.
That's right.
And we don't do it. We don't even sort of do it. Because not only do we focus on all the wrong things, the entertainment things, the cheap laughs, whatever it might be, but on top of that, when actual legitimate news comes along, not only do we not know how to deal with it, but we ignore it if it challenges the status quo. It's a lot easier in a newsroom to go along, to get along, than it is to challenge the groupthink mentality of a newsroom. And so journalists in America, whether they be at the very highest levels or at the very lowest levels, are all playing the same game. Somebody said to me the other day, we were doing an AMA on Reddit, and they said, so do you think that there are so many people bought off in media? So many people bought off that they won't tell the truth. And I said, no, you don't have to buy lots of people off. You're not very good at buying people off, aren't you, sir? You only need to buy one or two. You only need to provide one or two people the really cush deal, the really good money, the really sweet deal to get everybody else to fall into line. It's not paying people off. It's the hope that one day I'll be able to achieve the same thing. You play along and there won't be problems. There is no accountability. Hopefully the audio on this works. I don't know if it's in mono or stereo. Let's test it and see. You can laugh at the facial gestures. If not, you might need to crank it.
Why our enemies don't get it. Take the cuts.
Constitution founded our great country. The American Constitution, the blueprints for our way of life.
I really worry if we have lost an understanding of our Constitution, our founding principles, an understanding of what makes us strong.
They hate our freedom, they hate our way of life, they hate who we are, they hate our liberty.
It is like we are the Anne Hathaway of countries. You hate us, but only because you can't get with this. You hate America. Is it that we're too nice, that we sing too well, or that we're too loud? I dreamed a dream. All right. And that's why how we handle Boston Marathon bombing suspect Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is so important. For the strength of our system lies in how durable it is, even for our most heinous citizens.
I'm a little bit concerned because now he's got his Miranda rights, the right to remain silent.
Miranda's the guy or not?
I don't understand the point. First of all, the television, you have the right to remain silent. Fantastic. So the bombs that could be exploding and the pots that could be unfolding, we can't ask him.
Okay, first of all, not reading someone their Miranda rights doesn't mean they don't have their Miranda rights. You have Miranda rights under the Constitution. You don't have to say them out loud for them to become real. You're thinking Beetlejuice. Whatever the suspect has done or did, whatever they do say is admissible at their trial. It's another hallmark of our constitutionally guaranteed right to due process.
I think it's a mistake not to treat him as an enemy combatant.
We ought to look at him as an enemy combatant and moving him toward a military tribunal.
Yes, the civilian trial for terrorists none to work. So like Tim McVeigh, Ted Kaczynski, Ramsey Joseph, and the Blind Sheep roam our fair country in a bus, going city to city, singing medleys of original hits, and... What's that? Really? The dead are in prison, huh? Well, who am I thinking of? Is it, oh, the Muppets. Oh, all right. I get it. Well, to be fair, they both tried to take Manhattan. So in the wake of an assault on our freedom and way of life, we have quickly jettisoned the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and speedy trial, and the Fifth Amendment's right against self-incrimination. What's next?
This guy ought to be, right now, being interrogated in a very intense way. I waterboard him. I don't believe enhanced interrogation is torture. I don't.
You don't believe enhanced interrogation is torture? Because torture, like Tinkerbell, depends on if we believe. So there goes the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. Any freedom lovers want to take a crack at some of the lower ones, your thirds, your fourths?
Should the FBI be allowed to now go into mosques and wiretap and surveil? I think this is a great case for opening up that
I think that we should be able to put enlisting devices in there.
Sure, illegal search and seizure? Done! The freedom lovers at Fox are jettisoning amendments like Han Solo dumping cargo to make the jump to light speed. Imperial cruisers, right, Chewie? But you know what? Anybody can toss away the lesser-known amendments. Only a true patriot can set a course straight for the first.
We really have to consider that given the fact so many people hate us, that we're going to have to cut off Muslim students who come to this country for some period of time.
Yes, a religious litmus test for school enrollment, says Fox's most prominent liberal voice. Holy, what's left? A prohibition on the unmentioned personal rights in the Constitution that are designated to the people?
I want to know about this wife as well. I don't care if she knew about this. She ought to be in prison for wearing a hijab.
And down the Ninth Amendment! Down goes the Ninth Amendment! And come on, she doesn't just want a police state, she wants a fashion police state. Now, of course, to their credit, any of the Fox contributors or anchors who have studied law have a somewhat different take on this subject.
To try him as an enemy combatant, the government can't just willy-nilly do that.
I mean, now you're getting into a dangerous place.
Is that possible?
No.
But of course, these types of legal arguments are no match for freedom math.
How many Muslims in the world? Anybody? 1.57 billion. Let's just say 10% dislike us or hate us. That means 157 million Muslims hate us. If 10%, 5%, 1% are radicalized and would kill us? Hey,
That's the problem.
1.5 million people who are radicalized to the point where they would want to kill us Americans.
Wow, that's interesting. Can I see a footnote citation for those figures? Since we're just throwing amendments willy-nilly, what if we wanted to, I don't know, track the weapons that any of these America haters bought, or maybe do a background check if any of them try to purchase weapons here in America?
The right to bear arms is protected in the Constitution.
There's no ambiguity here. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Oh, no ambiguity there. You know, since in the last few decades, there's been 3,400 deaths from terrorism, Islamic and otherwise, and in that same period, we've had nearly, I don't know, 1 million deaths from gun violence, 30 to 40,000 a year every year. Is there anything we can do about that?
What Constitution? Vice President Joe Biden says the president may crack down on guns by executive order.
AKA taking our right to bear arms away.
Yes, it turns out there's only one amendment in our Constitution's pantheon that is exempt from statistical analysis or emotional freak-outitude. And it is the second. So God help us if the Muslims ever decide to form a well-regulated militia. No way to stop them. Give them a hand.
Come on, you can give him a hand. Even if you don't like Jon Stewart, nobody's better at calling out hypocrisy on the right than Jon Stewart. Now, if he just do it on the left, we'd all be a little bit better off. So the bottom line here is, I think he sets it up pretty well here, which is that at the end of the day, political parties and media, they're playing the same game with the Constitution. Now, we didn't need to show you a long clip of how CNN or MSNBC feel about the Second Amendment, because we know how they feel about the Second Amendment, right? We know that Piers Morgan goes on and on and on and on and on and drones for weeks and weeks and weeks because he can get like 10 people to watch it, talking about how we've got to get rid of the Second Amendment and take guns away from American citizens, because clearly they don't need them anymore. You only need them for hunting and sport and those kinds of things. The right is not regarding due process or privacy rights in this country, nor is the left, quite honestly. The left is not protecting privacy or Second Amendment rights. And so liberty must rise in order to protect the full rights of American citizens. So whoever asked me, and I think it was you, sir, which hand do I put up, the right or the left? Both sides. Both sides have to protect the full rights of American citizens. Would you agree? Yes. All right. So I want to show you something here. Thomas Jefferson said this: I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but who? The people. Can I hear you say the people? The people. The people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. Somebody send that over to Rick Santorum, please. He's a good man. So, I won't argue, let's not argue. So how does liberty rise? So the idea behind this project that we've launched, the Liberty is Rising project, is a truth in media project, and it's actually 3 platforms. Tonight we're going to talk about how to make this happen. The 3-step process is: step 1 is to inform, step 2 is to engage, and step 3 is to activate. Let's start with information. George Orwell said it well: the people will believe what the media tells them that they will believe. So let's talk about the NSA for a minute. And I think this is just a good example. We can do this with a lot of different examples, obviously, but I think this is a great one. So with the NSA, how has the media covered the story? Well, the first thing that the media decided to do was go after, of course, Edward Snowden's background. Who is he? Who's he dating? Who's the young woman that he was engaged to or dating? And what about his home in Hawaii? And how did he know they were coming for him already? And was it already beginning to leak out? Was he already under scrutiny before he decided to do this? Who are these Chinese people that he's connected to? And it was all about Ed Snowden. Everything, there's no award in his name, but everything was about this guy. Who is he? And what was he doing? And what they weren't talking about, well, was the NSA. But they moved on from there and they started talking about this connection to China and Russia. And quite honestly, I'm hoping to talk with Senator Rand Paul about this because he's made a couple of comments about it lately, which I desire to hammer him on. Specifically talking about the fact that, man, this is going to be bad news if Snowden is connected to China or Russia, or if he goes to them for some kind of help, or if he flees to those countries. So where is he supposed to go?
Right.
If you're a whistleblower, and granted, obviously there is a certain procedural legal standard for being a whistleblower. You can't just declare yourself one. But if he is a whistleblower, where is he to go? Is he to be like Bradley Manning? Is that his fate? Or does he go to China or Russia or to Ecuador or some place where they'll give him the opportunity to live outside of a prison cell? Meanwhile, the latest one that happened this week, did you guys see it? Yeah, if you saw it, you probably saw it in a clip rerun, right? Because nobody's actually watching Piers Morgan say this. But it was on Piers' show. And the comment, it wasn't Piers who said it, but one of his guests said that the reason that Glenn Greenwald covered this story is because he, his words, hates America. That's incredible. It's incredible. Glenn Greenwald covers whistleblowers. He says he has this kind of affection to cover these stories, and he's really drawn to these stories because of his hatred for America. Well, let's assume for a second that's even true, which I don't believe that it is, but I don't know Glenn Greenwald. It could be true. Even if it's true, so what? Your response to the idea that this guy is talking about and interviewing whistleblowers, instead of, again, talking about what he is saying, is instead about, no, he must be a bad messenger. And if the messenger is bad enough, then the message doesn't matter. We're going to try another video here. You might have to hold that in, okay? We'll see if it works. This guy's pretty good, so we'll see what he has to say. Well, consider this. The Patriot Act is without question a law that in many ways overreaches constitutionally protected rights of U.S. citizens. But even within that overreach, Section 215 requires the government to provide facts to show that the information that they are gathering relates to a foreign intelligence or terrorism investigation. Is it possible that the NSA was doing that through PRISM? That among the millions and millions of Verizon customers, there are cases where the NSA was investigating connections to terrorism? Yeah, it is possible. But what's not possible is that every single Verizon customer, even more so, that every wireless customer in America has made calls relating to a foreign intelligence or terrorism investigation. In short, what the media has not told you and what most lawmakers won't admit to is that even by the overreaching standards of the Patriot Act, what the NSA has been doing and is still doing is clearly illegal. So what you need to know, well, that is actually the fundamental question of our time. Here it is. Forget email and phone records and fear of terrorism. The real question, do you possess any actual rights? If the Constitution guarantees your protection from unlawful search and seizure, guarantees freedom of speech, freedom of association, due process when charged with a crime, and yet all of those rights can be suspended, not because you are a terrorist per se, but because the government wants to know if you might be a terrorist or might be connected to a terrorist, then you never actually had those rights in the first place. So when you hear someone say, hey, if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. What they're actually saying is, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't need to have rights. Benjamin Franklin saw it very differently, saying those who would trade essential liberty for temporary safety deserve neither and lose both. And that is full disclosure. So unless we begin to change the media narrative in America, unless we begin to change that, then liberty will not rise. So when we talk about this opportunity, this window, this chance that we have to really make a difference, it has to begin with media, because as we've demonstrated, it's just not going to work otherwise. Too many people being told too many things that are untrue, being distracted from the real issues of our time. I think a great example of this is Senator Paul's filibuster over drone strikes on U.S. citizens. Everything was right about this. Everything was done in the right way. He was clear in what he was doing. It was clear that when John Brennan his nomination was being debated in the Senate, that he wasn't going to try to stop the president from being able to appoint who he wants to appoint. He made that clear, and made it clear that this wasn't about John Brennan. It was about a larger issue to which Brennan has an attachment, but a larger issue that needed to be in the public's view. And so for 13 hours, Senator Paul, with the help of Ted Cruz, with the help of Mike Lee, with the help even at times of Marco Rubio, who I heard got wind that it was happening and hurried back from where he was so he could be a part of it. That's good for him. Came and joined in this, and it was a 13-hour-long filibuster. How many of you watched at least part of it as it was happening live? That's good people. C-SPAN is not usually the sexiest television, but I think it was C-SPAN 2, in fact, too, right? So, but this was worth watching. It was definitely worth seeing. But the end result of what happened through this was very, very significant. And some of you may not know this. In 2012, during the height of the presidential election, during the contest, the Washington Post did a poll. And at that time, 65% of Americans said they were for drone strikes on U.S. citizens who were overseas, who were suspected of terrorism. Only 26% were against. Now, it's important to remember something, that when Senator Paul got up to do his filibuster, he was somewhat careful in the language he used. He did not challenge the idea of using drone strikes to kill U.S. citizens who were overseas. He did not talk about that. In fact, he specifically said that he was not talking about that issue, but instead wanted clarity to the issue of whether or not U.S. citizens on U.S. soil accused of terrorism could be killed with a drone strike. And if you watched it, you heard over and over the example he kept giving. Someone sitting in a coffee shop in Seattle. Can a drone strike be used to take out that person who is a suspected terrorist? 1 month after that 13-hour filibuster, these were the numbers. 41% of Americans were still for the idea of drone strikes on U.S. citizens, not here in the U.S., overseas. 52% were against. That is a powerful 13 hours on C-SPAN 2. It's not like this guy was on Fox Prime. He's out there someplace, but made enough of a difference because what he did was he just gave people honest information. For 13 hours, I'm going to repeat myself probably 30,000 times and give the same examples over and over, because at some point, I want it to click for you. I want you to think differently about what you've been told, because over and over you keep hearing how we must do this in order to be safe. But as he continues to lay out the case for you, is it really making us safer? Is it making us safer to use a drone to kill an American citizen without due process rights here at home? And it convinced a 50-point swing, where people didn't say, yes, Seattle, or in Iowa, or in Iowa City. What did they say? They said, overseas. Shouldn't be doing it. It's a powerful, powerful time. Winston Churchill said this once. He said, men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. We think people want to do that, and that's one of the things we want to prevent from happening. The only chance for the liberty movement to really succeed is for us to be intellectually honest and ideologically consistent. And if you're taking any kind of notes tonight, if you're writing anything down, if you're going to, take a picture and put it on the wall and draw a little heart around it, or whatever you're going to do. No, I'm just kidding. I want you to write that down. That's the one thing I want you to take away tonight, if you're going to take something with you. That if the liberty movement is to succeed, it's for us to be intellectually honest and ideologically consistent. That's what rule of law is about. Listen, that is what the liberty movement has over the Occupy movement. That's what it has over the Tea Party movement. It is. The reason the Tea Party movement fell apart until the IRS thing, and it's now kind of like struggling to get back to its feet. The reason that it had legs for a short time and then it kind of came out from underneath it is because the Tea Party movement was about anger. It was about frustration. It was about legitimate problems in Washington that needed to be fixed. But when party establishment saw what was happening on the Republican side, they began to throw in these ideological curveballs. And all of a sudden, guys who were elected to go to Congress and girls who were elected to go to Congress and to fix things in Washington became the biggest spenders of the freshman class in Congress. Did you know that? Did you know that the Tea Party freshmen who came into Congress were the biggest spenders in Congress? That's what happened to the justified anger of the Tea Party movement. Because even though they had justified anger, they did not have ideological consistency.
Yes.
Last night I had the chance to be on a radio show from here in town. It's a guy named Simon Conway. You guys know Simon? Boo! Oh, come on. So I was on his show, and I was really looking forward to it. I love to debate people. I told these guys, you know, in my life, my loves are, I love God, I love my family, and I love to fight. And so I was like, let's do this. I really wanted to go and talk to him. And not because I'm a lovable guy, right? I'm friendly and I'm sweet and all that stuff. But I like to debate people. I like to challenge the way they think. I don't want to fight with you and call you names, but I want to challenge the way you think. And honestly, I want you to challenge the way I think. I want you to enlighten me, and I want to enlighten you. And so I went on the show, and Simon was a very gracious host. He was very nice and kept telling me that my name should be Mr. Liberty and all that stuff, which thank you. I'll take that. But one of the things that he said was, and I think this was supposed to be the moment that we got into a fight. He said, so the Constitution does not give us the right to kill someone like Anwar al-Awlaki. And the U.S. used a drone to kill him, but I don't care. And the phone broke up right as he said it. It was kind of odd. NSA must have done something. But the phone broke up for a second. And then I asked him, can you repeat that? And so he repeated it. And I was like, he said, so what do you think? And, okay. Well, I think that you and a lot of people don't care. But the reason I care isn't because I have any love for Anwar al-Awlaki. I don't know the al-Awlaki family. I know nothing about them. He may have been a very bad person. See, the problem is that so many Americans, and this is what I told Simon, so many Americans will look at Anwar al-Awlaki and say he's a terrible person, he's a bad person, he's inspiring terrorism, and we have to stop him. No matter what, we have to stop him. And so we drone strike. And then 2 weeks later, the US government uses another drone and kills his 16-year-old son. But lies about it and says he's a 21-year-old son who was born in Yemen and is an al-Qaeda fighter. And then when a journalist actually looks into it, must have been a foreign one, looks into it and says, no, in fact, his son wasn't 21, he was 16, and he wasn't an al-Qaeda fighter. In fact, he was just at a birthday party, and he was a US citizen born in Denver, Colorado. Then the administration says, oh, it was an accident. We were actually going for someone else and he happened to be in the wrong place. Because that is somehow the acceptable response to so-called drone strike collateral damage. Oops is okay. Now the problem with that is that, and this is what I told Simon, I don't know al-Awlaki, but I would fight every day for the rights of his son. Because I have 3 sons. And as soon as someone changes the definition of what a bad person is, then their lives can be taken too. That's what ideological consistency is about. It's not about saying, well, we'll suspend the Constitution or we'll suspend due process rights because we don't like that guy or because that guy's scary or brown or overseas or has a weird religion that scares me. That doesn't give you the right to suspend his rights. And the fool, hear me when I say this, the fool who agrees to that line of thinking is saying, as soon as you consider me to be a threat or a bad person because I read a Bible, or because I believe in the Constitution, or because I have a 501c4 document that says liberty on it, that now I'm a bad person. And I'm an enemy of the state. Where the liberty movement has an opportunity is to be the one political movement in America that is ideologically consistent. That doesn't shift just because the issue shifts or the policy shifts. I'd also say this to you. that handing over your own civil rights by grabbing someone else's is a fool's mistake. One of the big problems that the Republican Party and the pro-life movement has had in this country is that it's not a pro-life movement.
That's right.
My guess is most people in this room are probably pro-life. Most people in this state who are voting are probably pro-life. So they say. But most people in this state who are registered Republicans are actually not pro-life at all. And as you can see here, I say they are not pro-life, they are pro-fetus. Why is that? Because the evangelical movement in America, despite its strong stand on the sanctity of human life, has not treated human life with sanctity at all. And so when the evangelical movement stands by and agrees with drone strikes in Yemen, or in Pakistan, or in Somalia, and kids there are killed, and then have the audacity, quite frankly, the audacity to walk into a church and to pray for God to end abortion in America. We really believe that that is being pro-life. So the first part of this process is to inform people. That's what we have to do. And part of what we're informing them on are not just facts, but ideology. Helping them to see where their view has been skewed by media. Because that's what they're in the business of doing right now. The second step then, is after they've been informed, is to be engaged. Because it's one thing for me to tell you about all the problems right now in society, and all the things in America that need to be fixed and need to be changed, and we got to change this, and we got to change that. Let's do it. Like Howard Dean, let's go take all those states. Rawr, that's right. But if we don't do anything, if we don't get engaged, then what's the point of it? Actually, if we don't get engaged, we end up like Howard Dean, right? All of a sudden, it's all over with. So how do we change things? How do we change the White House? How do we change Congress? How do we change the Supreme Court? How do we get involved and do that? And I say we don't. I say we don't. We will, but we don't yet. Until first, we change towns and we change counties. And there's a sharp guy in here named Sean. Oh, I met her there. Where'd you go? So much work has been done in local towns and counties, but I want to show you something here. You guys have been hearing all about this, right? So you got riots in Turkey right now. You got riots in Brazil. Do you know what the riots in Brazil were over? Say again? Bus fares. Yes. Bus fares increased. Do you know by how much?
20 cents.
20 cents in some places, 9 cents in some places. And so people went nuts. They're like, wait a minute, 20 more cents? No. Pedro. And they went crazy. And they started trashing Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and they're riding in the streets, and cops are fighting with people and macing people, and it's crazy. Pepper spray everywhere, and it's insanity. It's nuts over bus fares. Somebody sent me a message the other day and said, Ben Swann, all you do is talk to people about how you want to inform them, wake them up. We need action, man. We need action like they have in Brazil. Okay. So here's what happened in Brazil. As the demonstrations grew, protesters spoke out against a variety of grievances. So it started with bus fares, but it grew, became more. Ranging from deficient education and health systems, corruption, government spending on mega events, and increasing cost of living. Are those legitimate things to be angry about?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I like your enthusiasm. The complaints reflect the rise of a larger, richer, more sophisticated middle class, demanding better public services, lower prices, cleaner politicians. The Financial Times, Joe Leahy wrote that. Now, because of the more generalized nature of the protests, some demonstrators used the catchphrase, "It's not just about 20 cents." That's what they were saying. So, it started out about 20 cents, but it grew to much more. Hey, that's not bad. That's not terrible. June 18th, Brazil's president said her administration would heed people's concerns, vowing to improve public services and combat inflation. Brazil woke up stronger today, she said. 7 cities, all those, announced reductions in bus fare the same day. On June 19th, the mayors of Rio and Sao Paulo also said there would be reductions in transportation fares. Yay! It fixed it. I don't know. I don't know if it made it back what it was. But here's the bigger issue. Look back up there. What was the anger about? It's not just what? It's not just 20 cents. Right? Here's your 20 cents back. And they're like, go home. We're done. Victory! Claim victory for the working class. We're stronger now. You're not stronger. People have been beaten over the head and pepper sprayed. And now you're going home. But at least you got your 20 cents back. And unfortunately, that's part of the major problem with Viva la Revolution. Because burning cars and trashing cities doesn't get you those results. What gives you results is when people, number one, are informed, and number two, take action and make actual changes. So there's this whole thing that happened in Iowa City, and you guys should be extremely proud. You should be extremely proud. Cameras, license plate recognition technology. I had a conversation in the hallway a few minutes ago about how do we do this in other places, and my thing is, the only way it happens is for you to teach other cities how to do the same thing. Now, their system of government may be a little bit different, their city charters may be different, but those things need to be amended then. What you all have done in Iowa City is a huge victory for liberty. You didn't flip the White House. You didn't change the makeup of Congress. The Senate is not running better now, but Iowa City is running better now. And that is where engagement happens. See, we have this theory, this idea that we have to have change on a massive level in order for it to really count for something. So people will get all excited about the Ron Paul campaign, and they'll give millions upon millions of dollars to that campaign because we're going to see something different. We're going to see a real president who stands up for rule of law and the Constitution, and then he doesn't even win the primary. Well, I guess we could argue that. We might be able to argue that. Well, he didn't get to go in that spot. And then all of a sudden, people are deflated and sad. I guess nothing's ever going to change for us. No. It changes when you decide to change it. But I'll tell you this, friend, if you believe it only changes from the top down, you got it all backwards. It changes from the bottom up. The reason we call it grassroots is it's grassroots. Grassroots is the most overused and misused term in political terminology, isn't it? Everyone's grassroots, and nobody's grassroots. This is grassroots. What happened in Iowa City is grassroots. We're going to fix red light cameras. We're going to fix drones, not all over the country. We're not going to get a federal ban on drones. We're going to fix it above my house. That's the idea. That's how it's done. UN's Agenda 21. I love Agenda 21. This is something you might not know about me. I really do. I love it. I think that Agenda 21 is one of the best things that's ever happened to this country. Because what the progressives have done and the globalists have done through Agenda 21 is give us a blueprint for how liberty will rise. They have given us a blueprint. You ever heard of ICLEI? ICLEI is the local government for sustainability group. It's a non-government organization that works with local governments though to implement the United Nations blueprint for sustainable living, Agenda 21. They know exactly what they're doing. How brilliant to not try to take Agenda 21 through a federal level or even a state level, but just go around to individual cities and say, we're going to work with you for smart growth and smart development. Bypass all that big stuff. 1,100 cities worldwide are members of ICLEI right now. That number is actually down. Because the more people have learned about Agenda 21, the more that are actually getting out of it now. But I want you to see this. This was actually written a number of years ago. It's by Gary Lawrence. He is a Seattle planner. He was an advisor to the Clinton-Gore Council on Sustainable Development. He said, he said, in some cases, LA 21, local Agenda 21, is seen as an attack on the power of the nation state. So we call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. We combat globalism and the removal of civil liberty and freedom by being wise. Don't rewrite the playbook. Go grab the other guy's playbook and run his plays against him. That's what we need to be doing. Agenda 21 was being implemented in a very successful way, just as Common Core is being implemented in a very successful way right now. But it's not done on a huge level. It's done through local levels. Same way that Liberty will rise. To take the same approach. How do we deal with local law enforcement when it comes to policing for profit? How do we deal with local city councils? Local county commissions when it comes to red light cameras and speed cameras? We do it by tackling them one community at a time. And when you've done it in yours, you teach the next one over. This is how you do the same thing. This is the biggest headache you will give any globalist anywhere. Just a couple things to watch out for. Educate people, combat these issues: smart growth, smart code, sustainability, smart meters, sustainable development. Even as you're recording this right now, sir, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this. That man hates smart things. That's what they'll say. Because another thing that Agenda 21 and the UN and globalists have done a very good job of is messaging and branding. Messaging and branding.
Until they believe it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And control the language. Joel and I talked about this today. Change the language until freedom is slavery. So, until stupid becomes smart, and until smart actually means oppression and control, right? And so we have to be careful with languaging, how we talk about things. Part of what we want to do in our engagement process is create language and work, not all coming from me. Okay, everything I'm telling you, these are crowdsourced efforts to create strong language that we're able to use that will appeal to people in a way that, again, allows them to move forward. We want to engage student groups. We want to engage journalists and wake them up, business owners and entrepreneurs, Tea Party groups, Occupy groups, independent voters. And then, of course, there's some bigger things, too, that you guys need to focus on. Liberty, Iowa shocked the nation in 2012. You guys were awesome. You guys were really awesome. And come 2014, the one disadvantage that you'll have is that the establishment is now expecting you. They know that you're coming. And they know that you're real, that you exist, and that you actually are a force. The Tampa rule change is a huge one that has to be dealt with. And that has to be dealt with on a local level as well as on a national level. It starts on a local level by getting after your local national committee man, committee woman. I don't know if they're here tonight. But you get after them and you let them know what you expect of them, or they're going to be looking for another post. That these rule changes have to be fixed. I talked to Morton Blackwell the other day, and there's an effort being made right now to overturning the whole thing's probably not going to happen, but a piece by piece shift can take place to fix that rule change in Tampa, and that's what's being worked on right now. You are more engaged than the average person, as I tell you this, and you know what's on the line, so it's got to happen. The last part of this process is to activate people. And engagement activation may sound sort of like the same thing, they're a little bit different. The long-term goals. There are some long-term things that we're hoping to do through this project. First of all, we believe the best ideas do not come from Washington. They certainly do not come from lobbyists or from corporations. They do come from the people. They don't come from all people. Some people have some really bad ideas. They do. However, that's what crowdsourcing is about. So as you know, we're doing this thing through Kickstarter, or you may not know that, but this project that we've launched is actually happening through Kickstarter. But the Kickstarter model is good for more than just money. It's also a great way to crowdsource ideas. If we're talking about healthcare, why aren't we crowdsourcing people who are experts in the healthcare field? Not pharmaceutical companies, but people who have worked in that field and worked with people, and people who have struggled from that field, and crowdsourcing from them ideas that can then be looked at, contemplated, worked through, revised again, and eventually become legislation. At some point, legislation in this country has to begin to come from the people again. Because it doesn't now. You probably know this. The laws that are being passed are not written by lawmakers, and they're not coming from you. They're coming from lobbyists. Nobody's even reading the bills anymore. So we have to change that. The activation step, granted, is a further step than where we are right now. But it's one we want to get to quickly. And the more support that we have and the more people who are involved in this project, the faster we get there. We want voices. We want people who are willing to stand up and say, you know what, I want to be counted. I want to be a part of this process. I'm going to show you one more thing here.
Dear America, as children we all grew up learning that embracing the truth was a noble idea. We expected it from our parents, our family, and friends. We also grew up with the sense that media and the news were trustworthy. Sadly, this is a time gone by. Truth in media is a thing of the past, but it doesn't have to be. If you support restoring truth in media, click here and see how you can help. Ben Swann is ready. Are you?
You can't run up here and click that, by the way. So here's what I want to close with tonight. The Truth in Media Project, I'm not looking for money from you. What I am looking for are people who will stand up and be counted as part of this project. Because that's what we really need. At the end of the day, we don't need dollars. We need people who are willing to say, I want to be a part of something that actually means change. That doesn't mean that I'm your savior and I'm here to save the world and I have this idea that somehow I'm going to fix things. I'm not. But I believe I can be a catalyst to connecting groups around the country that are ready to do this. So when I tell you that liberty is rising in this country, I believe absolutely tonight that it is. I believe that our window is limited. But I also believe that for just such a time as this, this movement has come along. This is our opportunity. This is our chance. Thank you, guys.